With me now is the Conservative MP, Maria Caulfield. She resigned as Conservative Vice Chair for Women over Theresa May's Brexit deal and is a strong advocate of Brexit. Welcome to you indeed. What do you think the consequences of no-deal Brexit would be?
I mean, you know, I've always been very clear that a deal would be the preferred option, but it doesn't mean that if we didn't have a deal that we couldn't succeed very well. What it would mean is there would be customs checks that would be introduced, and even with a no deal, a WTO terms, that's how we trade with the rest of the world that we're not in a free trade relationship with. So we can do this. And in terms of the Northern Ireland border, to be specific, I sit on the Northern Ireland Select Committee, and we heard clear evidence that even with a no deal outcome, there is absolutely no need for a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland.
But, you know, it's all bother and no gain. I mean, there's nothing we gain out of a no-deal Brexit, is there? We just get, as you say, obstacles to trade in various areas.
Well, no, there are positives to gain, and if you ask lots of people who voted to leave, they assumed we'd be leaving on a no-deal basis. So it does mean that we come out of the EU, we're no longer in the customs union, the single market. It does mean we're able to then open up free trade arrangements with other countries around the world that we currently can't do as members of the EU. So there are positive aspects to it, but there is no doubt that a deal between us and the EU would be the preferred option that everyone would like to see.
Your constituency actually voted Remain, though, didn't it?
My constituency, it was a bit like the national referendum, but in reverse. It was 52-48. Yeah. So, you know, but I have been overwhelmed by the response from people to say that they want us to get on with it now. Businesses want some certainty about what's happening after March. And I think people are a bit Brexited out. They want politicians to take control. That's what they voted for, was Parliament to take control and to get on and deliver Brexit.
I mean, you're one of those who thinks there should have been the vote last week.
I would have liked to have seen a vote, but actually, you know, if the Prime Minister can negotiate a better deal, the big issue for most parliamentarians, whether they voted Leave or Remain, is the backstop. And if Theresa May can renegotiate that, either get a unilateral exit from the backstop or some legal text that would ensure that we weren't trapped in it, a time limit perhaps, I'd be more likely to support the deal.
And did you support her last week?
Well, you know, the vote was a private vote. I'm not going to declare how I voted, but it's clear.
I mean, you've been on platforms with Jacob Rees-Mogg.
No, absolutely, but it's a private individual vote for each member of Parliament. But the party as a whole, you know, supported and had confidence in the Prime Minister. If there was a vote today in the House of Commons, I'd certainly be supporting the Prime Minister. And I think what Jeremy Corbyn has done by calling for this no confidence vote is actually united the party right behind the Prime Minister.
I mean, it's a bit odd, isn't it, that a third of the party voted no confidence in her last week, and now everyone's saying they're going to vote for her in this vote that Jeremy Corbyn's put down. I mean, which is it? Do you back her or not?
Well, I think, you know, the vote last week was an internal Conservative party vote. It was, you know, looking at the leadership of the Conservative Party. The vote, if we have one today or tomorrow or whenever he calls it, you know, is about who is the Prime Minister, the best person to lead us in the negotiations, but to lead the country as a whole. For me, it's certainly not Jeremy Corbyn.
Don't you think it'd be a good idea now to just have a bit of a rethink and for MPs one way or another to look at the options of another referendum or going out with no deal or Mrs May's deal?
Well, I think when people talk about the options that could be presented to Parliament, that's natural parliamentary process. If the vote had gone ahead last week, there were several amendments that MPs had laid down, some of which were about a people's vote, some were about a unilateral exit from the backstop. There was a range of options, and the Speaker will choose up to 6 of those options. That happens in every single bill that comes before Parliament. That's a natural process in Parliament, so I don't think that's unusual. It won't be the government laying down those amendments, I would doubt, but there will be MPs, I'm sure.
So you think that's the way it's going to work? I mean, if and as you say, you're looking for changes on the backstop, but if they don't come and this is voted down, you think then this matter of the direction which the country goes will be decided by amendments in the sort of usual way?
I mean, if you look at the programme motion before the withdrawal agreement, which we did actually vote on last week, you know, Dominic Grieve put down an amendment to have another meaningful vote at the end of the process, and that was supported by Parliament. So amendments to legislation happen all the time. So it's, you know, although in the media it seems to be a very different way of doing things, that's the day-to-day work.
I mean, is that what the party managers, the whips, are saying to you, that this is how they think this is going to work?
They've not really had any discussions. Until we know what the Prime Minister comes back with, it's very difficult to know how most MPs are going to vote. But if she's able to secure something around that backstop that gives us the reassurance that it's not a permanent position, that we can get out of it, and even a time-limited kind of aspect to it, we may all vote for it.
I mean, it won't be, we know it won't be changes in the actual withdrawal agreement. It will be possibly some kind of legally binding statement about ending the process. that would be enough for you?
Well, I'd have to look at the words,
Yeah.
but something around that would give me confidence that we are not just entering into a room with the door handles on the outside and we have no way of getting out. It's too big a risk to the United Kingdom. It stops us from doing free trade with other countries. We'll be rule takers and not have a seat at the table. So for me, the backstop is the fundamental problem.
Because, for someone like you who wants Brexit, what the Prime Minister is saying is that if people don't come on board with her deal, it might go the other way. I mean, you risk no Brexit, as she puts it, via referendum.
Well, in the legislation, when we passed the withdrawal bill earlier this year, we set the legal deadline of when we'll be leaving in the EU on the 29th of March. And the legislation says if we don't have a deal, we leave on no-deal terms. That's the current legislation. And Parliament, if it wants to reverse that, has got a very short window.
Mrs May says there is this possibility that...
Well, there's also the possibility...
Because we know the majority of individual MPs voted to remain, and most of them are rather more dismayed about hard Brexit than you are. So accepting hard Brexit may actually mean you don't get any Brexit. Well,
there's always risks with these things. There's a risk that we could have a people's vote, but there's a risk that we would, Brexiteers would win the people's vote once again. So that no one knows what the future's going to hold. But it's clear that Jeremy Corbyn is very nervous about this, because that's why he's held back on this no confidence motion. The majority of his seats were Leave constituencies, and if he's seen to be the person that undermines Brexit...
He's going the other way, isn't he? The overwhelming majority of his voters are in favour of remaining.
Well, I don't know. If you look at some of those northern seats, if you look at the seats in Wales, they voted Leave by large amounts. And I don't think he knows what to do, because whichever way he goes, he's going to upset constituents in Labour seats. And so he's got as much of a problem with Brexit as the Conservative Party has.
What's your best guess? Where are we going to be in April next year?
Well, I think we will have left the EU. I'm hoping that we'll be able to leave with a deal. That would be my preferred option. And I'm hoping that over the Christmas period, the Prime Minister is able to give us the reassurances we need about that backstop.
OK, Maria Caulfield, thank you very much indeed.